Hey, it's Alex here, and I wanted to go over a different topic other than real estate, just because we're getting a lot of questions from clients, and there's definitely some concerns out there as well. So if you have any exposure to what's happening, I hopefully can share a little bit more information on exactly what we're seeing. And this presentation was prepared by Sharran Srivatsaa, the president of Real Brokerage and a former Goldman Sachs employee. So as of last Friday, Silicon Valley Bank was taken into receivership, and I'm going to walk down what's happened and kind of where do we go from here? What are the potentials? And just to give you a little feedback and a little bit of awareness around it. So understanding the collapse. So Silicon Valley Bank was the actual 16th largest U.S. bank in the United States with $209 billion in assets. So on the outset, it sounds like a huge bank, and it is a huge issue. But one thing I want you to know is that their assets make up less than 0.9% of all banking assets in the United States. So it is something to be aware of, but it's not as big of a concern as if they represented a larger percentage of banking assets. Now, this is the biggest bank to fail since Washington Mutual in September of 2008 during the Lehman Brothers crisis. The thing to note is that I actually was working for Chase Bank when Washington Mutual had gone out of business and was also taken into receivership. And I worked as an REO manager dealing with the bank-owned properties from the loans that were, defaulted on, for Washington Mutual. So this is something to note. Today is actually March 13th, and Signature Bank, as of yesterday, was also taken into receivership as well. So the backstory of what happened, because it actually collapsed on March 10th, and there was a run on the bank, and there's a couple reasons. And the regulators put it into FDIC receivership as of Friday. In 2021, it has been a bank that has banked a lot of really big startups, and their assets have grown. So in 2021, their deposits actually doubled. Etsy, Roku, these are some of the companies that you may have heard of that actually had their deposits there. So they invested in ultra safe US treasuries. But there is an inverse relationship between prices and rates. And one thing you may have heard in the economy is that the interest rates, the bank interest rates, have been going up. So on the bond yields is that what happens is that if you're buying a bond that pays 3% and the new bond pays 4%, the old bond is actually less valuable. And you don't need to understand exactly on the math there, but what had happened is that a number of companies started taking money out of the actual bank. In the past, you would have to go to the bank to get those deposits out. But in this day and age with technology and everything else, people have gone and they can just do it online. So they were forced to go ahead and sell some of these treasury bonds that are from the United States government. And by selling them before they matured, they actually took $1.8 billion in losses. And when they did that, they had to shore up their, the deposit space, but they could not raise capital to offset the loss. So the stock started dropping, quickly. And they did have a big concentration in tech and the withdrawals, because venture capitalists that we don't know what's going on with their bank, they started pulling the money out, and then that created actually like a run on the bank. So they didn't have enough money on hand. So the number one biggest issue is that companies' cash was directly affected. So some of these companies, like I mentioned, Roku, Etsy, and a lot of other companies, what happened is that they use these funds to pay for their payroll. So when these funds are used for the payroll and they don't have access to it, they cannot make payroll. That's why it was super critical for the government to step in as quickly as they did, to make sure that payroll is not missed, because typically they start clearing the funds on Friday or a few days before they're actually due, which, payday is typically on the 15th. So that's one thing. So numerous payroll providers were affected. I know one company, they're in the tech business, and their payroll company clears through Silicon Valley Bank. They could not go ahead and make payroll because they actually paid a little bit early. So that was something that was a kind of a big concern. So, it is an effect that has a little bit of a ripple. And this is a really interesting fact, is it impacted 20 to 20% of Washington wineries, because a number of Washington wineries up in that area are, all their deposits are held with Silicon Valley Bank. So at $209 billion, it was estimated around $170 billion were uninsured deposits outside of the $250,000 rule. There's also a crypto shakeup with the USDC peg. You don't have to be a big crypto person, but what this means is that there's certain coins that are considered stable coins. And these stable coins, it's important for you to know, because how it's set up is that it's supposed to be $1 for $1 to stay stable, because you've known in cryptocurrency, Bitcoin and whatnot, there's a lot of volatility. So there was some volatility there, and it was no longer 1-to-1, which creates concerns. This is the biggest challenge that we have. And the biggest challenge is that we have a lack of consumer confidence, because if you don't have confidence in the banking system, you are going to have a lot of concerns all across the board. And that's really what we're kind of working through, and our job is to provide clarity. And I did want to dispel some of the information that's out there. So then the real question is, what happens next? Because these are the articles. Silicon Valley Bank collapse, Treasury, FDIC steps, U.S. government steps in and says people with funds will be able to access their money. U.S. says all deposits fail at bank will be available Monday, and they've made good on that. So what I realize is that we must be super grateful that this is a scenario where all of the real issues have already kind of been resolved, and the bank it's being backstopped when it comes to this. These are some notes, like the regulators will backstop it. They will either unwind the bank and Signature Bank, which as of yesterday also was in receivership. The federal government will provide loans for the affected institutions, and we're already seeing that they're putting it out there. They will create a deposit insurance national bank. The uninsured deposits are likely to get made whole. They might be purchasing the assets by other banks, will come in and purchase these banks. And really, Congress, Treasury, and the Fed are going to work together. Consumer confidence may languish for a little while, but in the meantime, the world does not stop. And really, this is where I wanted to end this. Some of our clients have been affected, so it is something that we're fully aware of, and it could be a real concern. But consumer confidence is the biggest concern when it comes to this equation. But if you have any additional questions about this, or if you have any concerns, or if you have some exposure, definitely let us know. We're here to help any way we can, but just want to keep you posted on kind of the feedback and what we're seeing out there as well. So have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next time.